Hi, Elyes. How are you doing?
Great. I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
And such a great honor for me to have you first. And the circumstances made that we talk once you are in the U.S., but not once you were in Tunisia. So either ways, I'm so glad to have you as my guest, and I'm really looking so forward to know more about what is going on with you, Elias. So first, I'd like to introduce you to our guests, our listeners, to whoever is going to watch maybe or listen to the second edition of the IKIGAI International Podcast. And I'm so glad to have you as my first guest for the second edition. So, Elyes is one of the most prominent artists, directors, producers, and let's say the icon in the Tunisian cinema. And Elyes, I'll let you introduce yourself the way you want, the way you see yourself. Who's Elyes?
Well, I think it's always a tricky question, to talk about yourself. But anyway, um, in a very simple words, I'm just a guy who just want to do always better and work for excellence and just like, yeah, hard worker, ambitious, don't settle for, always in his comfort zone. So, well, in a very, brief sentences, I was born and raised in Tunisia, and then at a very early age, I saw that I'm really attracted to filmmaking and telling stories, essentially. But I didn't know that I'm going to be one day a writer as well. So, and I was so, you know, uh, skinny and not self-confident at all. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be a director, maybe something else, but I'm gonna tell stories. And then at the age of 13, 14, I was like, hey, dude, you have no choice. You have to go for it and you have to study this thing and you have to do it very well. So I started studying by myself first, and then I went to Paris after high school and I studied filmmaking there. And there was no school in Tunisia at that time. So, and then I made my way, as assistant director. I worked on some very good movies as well. I mean, one of those like Desert Fire and the um, Star Wars 1 and 2 as assistant director and set manager on those ones. And then very early I started to direct TV commercials. In 2002, I did my first 98. I did my first play, Les Oiseaux du Paradis, and then I did a couple of other plays, and then I did a lot of musicals as well, like really a lot of musicals. The Carthage openings and closing ceremonies and stuff like that. That was really fun working with musicians and singers and yeah. And then 2004, I started my path into documentaries, and it was something that really, really interesting because all these subjects were hot topics. And I started to travel around the world, and I did around 12 feature documentaries and some series as well. And I still doing this till today. But then I was also attracted to fiction, and I did some shorts, not a lot actually, like two shorts, and then directed my first feature, and then second feature, and now continuing and on working on the new projects as well. And then I traveled. I lived in Dubai. I lived in Qatar. I lived in Cairo, Egypt, of course, Tunisia, Paris, Belgium, and then the big move to the US in 2019. New York, then Austin, Texas, and now Los Angeles. Here we go.
Great. Great. Thanks really for really kind of uh your life journey is really inspiring and things for making it easy for me to introduce you because once my guest has a lot of uh, life experience, it's really very difficult to convey it for me, but thanks for making it very easy.
All
And
right.
since you talked about stories and storytelling, and yes, And I'm really very passionate about storytelling. So we're going to start, let's say, talking about your passion for telling stories. So my question for you, Elyes, is related to you in generally speaking. How far do you think it's interesting for people to tell stories? And is it different if you tell it like in real life or in cinema? Or do you think like even real people, like in the real world, they just use the poetic techniques even when telling their stories? So how far is your life connected to stories, and how do you see stories yourself?
Well, I think that stories are embedded with being a human being, actually. It started, and cinema started from being on Earth, like the long time ago. Human beings were in the prehistorical era. They were like drawing on these caves, all these, elephant mammoths and and chasing all these animals in their daily life. And this is what's projecting on a wall what they had in mind and or their psyche or their life. And this is cinema. This is just cinema. They were telling stories on walls, and basically we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it with more technology and techniques. And but being human and telling stories, it's something that goes together. There's no human beings without stories at all. Everyone has stories. Every single one. That's what unites us, and that's what give us the opportunity to overcome difficulties and challenges every day. And this is what makes us, projecting, thinking, visioning our future. So actually, there's no human beings without stories. That's period. That's very simple. So for me, as everyone, I made it like being my daily job and my passion as well. And it started by me being an only child. So I had like this whole world, and I've been a lot into silence and spending a lot of time by myself. And I was inventing stories, So I never get bored, by the way. So that's why and then I had my nanny. We had a beautiful love story together. So she came when I was 1 day old, and she left when I was exactly 30 years old. And she's from a region of El-Kef in the north of Tunisia, and a beautiful region. And she's the one who was like really introduced me to stories and telling stories about her ex-husband, who was a soldier in casino battle and in Dushin and whatever. It was like a whole crazy stories from El Kef and from her husband. And she was like thinking one day she will have some, money from France because her husband just like fought with the French army. Anyways, so a lot of those stories from the popular region in Tunisia were a kind of fuel my imagination. And I was also in the Medina of Tunis in Halfawin. This is where I grew up in my grandparents' house, and from my mother's side. And there were a lot of stories there, a lot of stories, and I tell some of them in my first book, La Furieuse. Yeah, so this is how everything started. Yes. I don't hear you.
Yeah, I was on mute. I'm sorry. So I can
Sorry.
relate. I can relate to what you're saying, Elyes, in two different ways. So I'll be asking you two different questions. Maybe they can be interrelated. So the first one is related to El Kef. So you mentioned a region in Tunisia which is really well known, especially with playwriting and theater, Masrah El Kef, the theater, and we have a lot of artists, many of them originated from El Kef, and I don't know if I can relate this to the region, to nature, to the place itself. Every place had its story to tell. Like you said, El Halfawin. And people, they tell stories everywhere, but it's particularly linked to their personas, to everyone who tells a story. For example, in Medina Al Arabi, like La Medina, be it Al-Halfaween or be it any let's say place having that kind of architecture and special characteristics. We do always have that wise old person who tells always stories, just like you said, like grandparents. And do you think, like, to tell stories, someone has to acquire that particular maturity and kind of lived life experience so that they can really deduce a particular morale, to tell it, to share it, to teach, to be didactic from that particular way? That's my first question, and we can relate it to Elyes's style in script writing, because you talked about your writing career as a writer. So I'd like to know, is there any link between how Elyes was introduced to storytelling in, let's say, your career path now as a writer?
Yeah. Well, I think there's like two type of minimum people who would, there are those who have this amazing life stories, like my mother's mother, amazing life stories, but she's so introvert that she wouldn't tell you the story in a very let's say attractive way. She would just have this personal discussion with you and tell you something so profound, but not in a way of telling a stories. She would be like more, confidences and stuff like that, and telling you things that come from the heart, but not in the storytelling way. And my nanny, Omizina, was totally different. She was like, she would be even sometimes maybe inventing stories, but she will tell it in a very attractive way, and in a way that would like, oh, you'll be captivated by how the hell she's saying this, how the hell she's like telling all these, ups and downs and peak and cliffhangers, and without having any knowledge of storytelling techniques. It's very natural and instinctive. So you had this, and I had both. And the funny thing is that my first movie, L'Impasse du Temps Perdu, was about my mother's mother and this house in Halfaween. And I was telling her and asking her a question about death and the fear of death, etc. And being alone in this house, where that house, like 400 years old, had like witnessed so many, parties and ups and downs and kids and adults and, a lot of stuff. And now she's alone. Anyway, and she was like telling things, but not just in the storytelling technique, but she was like so sincere, and the silence were speaking more than her words. So I got that energy from my childhood. I grew up with that. So I'm the product of that lady, and many women's as well. I'm product of many more women's than men's. Actually, I had so many women's in my life, in my childhood, all my, uh, I don't know,
Do you
this
think women
family.
are good storytellers? I'm sorry to interrupt you, since you
Oh,
mentioned this.
oh.
Better than men?
I don't know. I mean, I knew some men, and I mean, I traveled a lot in Tunisia, and I mean, I have this souvenir and memories of this man and Shnini. He was telling stories like crazy. But I think they're both good. It's much more related to, how you get into it. And then some of them, they become fdewi, professional
That's what I
storyteller.
wanted to say.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
fdewi is
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
professional
yeah.
storyteller.
Tell her, yeah.
Yeah, so I got that from that energy from all these women's, and some of also my encounters with these guys and traveling in Tunisia. And then of course I had to learn the technique of telling stories. In 2016, and it's quite recent, it made like a kind of revolution in my life. I was like, heck, look, I'm gonna tell stories differently. And I have to redo everything from scratch. I had like a career of 20 years at that time, I've learned a lot of stuff and went in a lot of workshops and in film schools and practiced. But I said, no, I'm gonna do it differently now. And I opened up to the novel also. And I was really scared about that. Really, really, really scared. Because, you know, when in a screenplay, it's somehow
It's different.
it's different. It's simpler, but sometimes it's difficult because you have to be always in the present mode. And while in a novel, you know, you can play it where you want. And then when I started to write on novels, I was like, oh, this is great because you can really play the way you want. While the script is very condensed and it's very strict and
Straightforward as well. Yeah.
yeah, and you only describe the action. There's no intention. There's what he thinks. Da, da, da. I mean, you can put that, but it's like some
Yeah.
exceptions, and it's really very dry somehow. But you have to bring them because it's written for the screen and it's not written for, you know, the pleasure of reading it. Even though you have to write somehow, and this is a tip for the writers, screenwriters, you have to write also for the readers, even if you're writing a script, because they're going to be the one who's going to select your script or not. Anyway, so long story long, it's now I had to restart from scratch to learn the technique of screenwriters and then starting to mix it with what I had in my experience and then teach it like to other fellows as well.
Exactly.
So, and my style, to answer your question, I'm here to witness about diversity. So I'm very clear about my mission. I'm very clear about what I have to do. I'm very clear about my positionings in this big map of entertainment and film industry, especially here in So I'm the guy who is from North Africa who had this whole, you know, life experience living here in the US. And I'm here just like to make movies that bridge culture. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm not into the US/US stories, even though I can do it as a film director. But what comes from my heart are stories that will bridge cultures in any genre. It could be action, it could be thriller, it could be drama, it could be romance. But that's what I'm in now, and that's what I'm working for.
Exactly. So I'm just going to elaborate on what you said on your international experience. And yes, but before that, I want to talk about the novelistic genre because myself included, I'm majoring in arts and literature and most specifically in novel, let's say poetics. So in cross-cultural poetics. So to talk about once you mentioned novels in the novel, I cannot but talk about Barthes and the carnivalesque theory and the polyglot and how the novel is really very exceptional in its capacity to embrace all styles by staying unique in itself by being a novel. So we can have like intertextuality, like for example, I can remember Toni Morrison's jazz. I can remember The Sound and the Fury with Faulkner. So a lot of styles can be included, and that what makes the novel exceptional in a way. Also, you mentioned about the script writing, and also a lot of experimentation can be done at both levels. And we'll be talking later on about all aspects of this within the digital aspects, not necessarily storytelling, but how can we take humanities to a different level now with digital tools. But let's say cinema and TV and all related audiovisual materials, they can bring to life, you know, a successful novel or story, let's say, call it. And then we can feel it because, you know why I asked you about your style? Because every story can be really taken from a different perspective. And according to the person who's going to adapt the plot, the story, the script, the actors that they put the kind of their pure soul and essence into acting, something which is written on paper, black on white, it's really very, very exceptional. You know, what you're doing is so really beyond what someone can explain. And your career path, Elyes, is really very exceptional because I was about to ask you, why the US? When did you have that aha moment? And you said, I am going to go beyond. You'll have already that universal and the global experience. Yes, you have it already. Even when here in Tunis, you're making the tours. But why relocating at that particular time? Was there any stimulus? Was there any motivation? So I'm curious to know. And I'm sure that everyone is really, who's going to listen or watch this will be really curious to know why and how.
Yeah. It's related also, like there are different aspects of it, but at first we have to go back to the childhood, my childhood. I grew up with a father who used to work for Houston Oil and Texaco and then Bridge Gas. So he was in the oil and gas industry. And I was always in contact with, in my childhood, with his friends and colleagues, basically people who are coming from Texas and later they were from Britain, but basically they were coming from the US and wearing these Texan hats and boots. And at 6 and 7 and 8 I had like my Texan boots and hats, and without knowing what it is. And I remember he brought like this squared antenna in the 70s, and he was like, and I was like asking him, does it capture the US waves like the TV station? He was like, no, it's only Italy and France. I was like crying, why? So I was like really attracted to the US culture without being really into it like fully, because I was living in Tunisia, but it's like a kind of imagination what it could be, how it could be. And I was in contact with the English language at a very early age. I think like 7, 8. I was listening to these tapes of the TOEFL. And I don't know why we had that, but maybe my father, like I don't know, but he was like these cassettes, anyway. So I was really attracted. But then I went to France and I became the Parisian guy, or living in Paris, and really, really embedded into the French culture and the beauty of the French language and writing. And that's when I write a novel, of course, it's like I write it in French because I'm Francophone, essentially. And then the tilt came a little bit with everything, my personal stories, relationship, etc. I knew that I came to LA in 99 and I hated that time. I was like, spent like 9 months working on my English degree, living in Hollywood. Um, and then I didn't like it. So when they called me on Star Wars, I was just like, hey, dudes, okay, I'm coming. And I left all my, things like books and clothes and furniture, everything. And I never came back. And I was like, I will never come back. When I had my green card for extraordinary abilities in 2019, and I wanted to live in New York. I was in a relationship at that time with a woman living there, and we were together, and she was, why don't you apply for a tourist visa, artist visa, so you can stay more? And I was like, okay. And when we contacted a lawyer say, hey, look, you have like a amazing track record. Why you don't apply for extraordinary ability? I was like, I don't know what it is, but okay, let's go for it. And we did that, and I had my green card. And I was living in Belgium at the time. I was like, now you have to choose. Either you stay in Belgium or in France, where my son was living as well, so it makes sense to stay there, or you have to go for the big adventure. At that time, the relations just stopped with that woman, and I had really to choose either to stay or to go. Financially, it was very difficult because I was really in a difficult situation at that time. And, living in New York is so expensive. And I say, look, come back to that moment where you were a kid and thinking about being a director in the United States. Is that what you want to do? Say yes. This is the childhood dream. I can stay in my comfort zone in Tunisia. I have my house, I have my, contacts. I can very easily live very well. But I said, no, this is more challenging, and this is my life today. I don't know the next one what I'm gonna be. Maybe I'm gonna be a cat or dog or or a bird or but in this life, I have this amount of days till I go. So what I'm gonna do with that? I'm gonna stay in my comfort zone or I'm gonna go for the challenge for the unknown.
Yeah.
And it was really the unknown. And the worst thing for a human being is to go for the unknown. But that's the most exciting thing as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I went for the unknown and it was a kind of F struggle. Really like crazy. like like I don't know. I don't want to get emotional on it,
It's
but
okay.
it was really, really uh difficult.
Mhm.
Really difficult.
Mhm.
And every time I had to go beyond those moments where I was like in the tunnel and I don't see the light, I was like, what am I gonna do now? What's next? I don't know. I have no idea. And then a door opens and then I get into it and I discover a new space and then the tunnel as well. A new one, maybe a harder one. And
Yeah.
then no light. And then I'm gonna do I'm like, okay, go back to that inner forest. Think about it. Until I was in Austin, Texas, and I was my apartment, and everything was so great. And life brought me. I was shooting a documentary, and life brought me to again to LA, and I saw the palm trees, the beach, the sea, the Pacific, the vibes of Tunisia as well, because it's
I
very
was about
close.
to say this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, look, uh, it's here. We have to come back. We have to face it. It's happening here. And then it was a real battle between myself and I.
Yeah.
And I had the helps of some friends, basically in Tunisia as well. And I really want to thank them because they really helped me to make that decision. I was so afraid. But every time you're afraid of something,
That's
really,
where growth happens. That's where
that's where
growth
you have to
happens.
that's where you have to go. You're fearing that thing. I was like, okay, take a moment, take a deep breath, but go for that. And that's what I did. And now last year, exactly now 1 year now, with a friend, Shakib. He's living here in LA. He came to Austin, Texas. He helped me to pack everything. We rented a van, we trucked the car, and we drove from Austin, Texas to Los Angeles, California. And here I am.
I'm so happy for you because Elias, I'm seeing you as someone who's flourishing, and I see you as someone who's pursuing his dreams. Doing what you love, even though with the difficulties, with the challenges. Better do it, and maybe regret, or not do it at all and still regret. So the thing is that that's life, we go through those ups and downs. But I'm seeing you lately, Elias, publishing things, books. And I have seen you shooting your new movie as well, and traveling so that you adjust things and you shoot the special scenes there. So I'm not gonna reveal anything unless you want to do this. But do you want to talk about this, or are you
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's very simple. Some dudes they're just asking, yeah, where are you? What's going on? Your last movie was in 2017. And it's like, yeah, of course. But in the meantime, I worked on a lot of scripts. I've relearned and relearned again and again and again the craft and polished that craft again. So success, I mean, we don't have the same path. And some dudes was like, hey, no, he's out of the game or whatever. But I was like, working in silence, really, while some of my friends, they have a major success and I'm really, really happy for them.
yeah,
For me, it's like it was checking because like also you ask yourself, what the hell, where I'm going? It's like, am I good? No, da 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 da. And but then I was like working on silence, but also not working blindly, working with a strategy.
of
But
course.
that strategy is takes time. When you move from one country to another, it's
Very
whoa.
difficult. It is.
And then when you move from one city to another, whoa. And then I had, of course, but this is where I am now, and I'm restarting again from scratch.
Scratch.
Yeah. and I'm writing a book also about it. It's Restarting from Scratch, it's called. And restarting from scratch is quite challenging. So you need a lot of, humility and also respect for yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I shot like TV series, a documentary TV series for Channel, International Channel, season 1, season 2. And lately I did my first LA short film. So I wanted to start with short films, and it was a complicated one, but I'm happy that I did it. I'm doing another one this month, and preparing for a very indie feature here. And that's it. So here in the US, even if you have like a good track record, unless you're a superstar, you have really to make it here. You have to show people what you can do
Of
here.
course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
with the local means, with
Mm.
the US. US consumes US products
Of course.
essentially. We
Yes.
can we can here in the US they can like you as coming from outside or having you, but you have to be like through a very big film festival to have like the door open for you right away. Other than that, you have to prove yourself on the ground here, and that's what I'm doing.
I have a question for you, Elyes. So, as far as I knew and I know, from let's say the cinema industry, let's call it industry, maybe I want to. It's like it oscillates between industry and arts because isn't it, let's say, better sometimes, and you correct me if I'm wrong, to to have a kind of certain references to one's own culture, but still fit into the international benchmarks. Let's say, if you will be having a movie about, let's say, some cultures, some customs and traditions in Tunisia or maybe in the Maghreb region, to be represented at an international festival, isn't it much more intriguing and prominent to have that? Or maybe produce something like, let's say, which is labeled as having international benchmarks and talking about something which is really very global. So let me just refine my question in a clearer sense. For someone who is being active elsewhere than his hometown or his country, do you think it's better or easy to represent one's own culture in a movie, let's say talking about the Tunisian culture, and bring it to the US, or maybe recreating something global according to international standards while being in the US so that to fit into the system? Which one do you think it's easy, better? So it's up to you to answer this
Yeah.
according to the
I
relevance
don't
to
think,
you.
I don't think that there's an easy way to do it. Both are difficult because if you want to do something that comes from your country and it comes from your, your hometown, you need to do it in a way that it fits with the international standards. So it's accessible to the audience internationally. And still, it's really hard work, and we saw that. So you have to have, I mean, some fellows, they would write stories or direct things, and they would stay local. And that might be a choice. That might be, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't want to be judgmental. But they do something, and it's not gonna go anywhere. So because it's made in a way that it's not gonna export. So there are like some trademarks. There are some tricks and some way of doing things and some quality and some kind of mindset, the way you present things, so it's accessible to the international distribution. And doing things here in the US, which is like for the local market, you have to know the local market. You cannot come from Tunisia and say, hey, I'm going to do something for the US audience. It's like, you don't know anything about the US audience. You don't know anything about how people live here. You don't know anything about how society works here. So you have to live. You have to experiment. You have to get into the jam and just like experiment things and get like life going, because you create with yourself. You create with your soul, you create with your heart, your mind, your experience. So you cannot have this pretension to get into the US stories with things like happening here without having any life experience in the US. It doesn't make any sense. So that's why you have to take time to, because you're blinded by success. And I'm not. I'm blinded by creation. I'm not blinded by success. I don't care.
You have it already. Yeah, you don't need it for
I'm
now.
blinded by creating things, and I'm jealous about when I see people creating things and I'm not, and I'm kicking my ass and get that. Stand up every day, work hard, create, educate, elevate. That's what
Exactly.
I'm
We're going to
telling.
talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, this is it. So to answer your question, you have to have the craft to do so. And you have to learn it. And that's it. There's no shortcuts.
Exactly, yes. The next question, Elyes, is really related to what you've been talking about, is like creation is the driving principle of every artist, and I believe of every person who considers himself as a global citizen, and someone who has that vulnerability, who is really shown all through the arts. And I really liked let's say the three motto you use it,
Yeah.
which is create, elevate, and educate. So to what extent Elyes now is transitioning, or maybe you've been doing this for a long time, towards edutainment, education and teaching people what you know about your expertise?
Yeah, definitely. So it's my tagline today. Even the group I've created, the BGM Baccar Global Media here in LA. It's that's our tagline. It's create, educate, elevate, and this triangle, it's what you need. It's like the body, the soul, and the mind, and that's what we need to do. It's like you have to create, but you cannot create without being educated in creation, and you cannot elevate without education and creation. And these three elements are interconnected, basically. So that's what I do, and I'm offering this year a world tour of masterclasses in several countries. So in Tunisia, here in the US, in France, Saudi Arabia, and maybe in South America. We're working on it. And basically this is what we do, because in this masterclass, what I offer, it's acting in front of the camera and directing, but involving also self-development into it, spiritual introspection into
Great.
it.
Great.
Yeah, so it's connected with self-development. It's not the craft of acting being just technical
Technical. Yeah,
or artistic,
exactly.
but it's
Yeah.
also in the human design and elevating
The human
also
aspect is there.
exactly spirituality. So absolutely, that's what I'm working on now.
For whoever's going to listen to this, Elyes, or maybe watch the video, it would be really kind of you if you can include any link to registration, if it's open to the public. So please, let's make sure if we can share this with the community, with whoever's watching the Ikigai podcast, so that they can maybe get benefit from what you are providing, what you're offering. And thanks for sharing this info with me, Elyes.
Absolutely,
And
sure.
the last question is really related to taking all this to the next level with technology, and most specifically AI. So I have a question for you. Is like everybody now, they've been asking questions whether cinema is going to be either revolutionized or maybe threatened by AI. Just like, Frankenstein's creation, that let's say the person who created that Frankenstein, that monster turned out to be afterwards a threat for the creator. So what do you think are the benefits of maybe including AI into the cinema and movie industry? And it's already there. It has been already been there, but now let's say it's much more obvious and much more open to the public with OpenAI and all related tools. What do you think of this, Elyes, in terms of the educational part and the artistic part?
Yeah, definitely AI came in a moment where we were, I mean, it's been here for a long time, but not open to public. And um, I had like a big diving into AI thing with, major interaction with people working in AI in Silicon Valley and here in the US, in London as well, and been discussing about the subject. And definitely AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and it's gonna be bigger and bigger and bigger. The thing is that why for me AI was like mind blowing. It was like I felt I had this anxiety of like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? We're gonna all die. And then calm down, dude. It's not gonna be that way. Of course, it's threatening because it's the first time of human history we invented something that is smarter than us. And
Mm,
all
yeah.
the tools, of course, no, yeah, the IQ today
It
of the
can be
average of
managed.
yeah, no, it's smarter than us. It's smarter because it
Mm,
was designed in a way that it's gonna be now the average IQ of the ChatGPT 4 is equal to Einstein IQ. And we're just starting. We're in the
just the beginning.
just beginning, so it's gonna go very, very far.
Yeah,
So, uh, it has a magic, amazing aspects in healthcare, and I've been discussing in Atlanta, one of the major inventors and scientists in healthcare and AI, and just crazy what's going on
it
there,
is. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So research on cancer and stuff, etc. But in our field, there's a major threat, definitely, for actors, for writers, for cinematographers, 3D animators, everyone, graphic designers, and everyone. But now it's the strike that we had here in LA, like during 5 months, the SAG-AFTRA strike, actors and writers, uh, was like a kind of red flag. Hey, dudes, we need to talk about that. And that's what we need to do. We need to talk about it. And we need now to make like kind of legislations and definitely have rules and guidelines how to use that. Because I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing if we do bad things with it. It could be a good thing if we know how to manage it. So it's not harmful for the industry.
Mhm.
Definitely every single one in the industry, I mean, at least those who are on the creative side, need to adapt. They have like this learning curve anyway. And then that's what I'm doing as well. That's what I'm doing. I'm educating myself. I'm taking courses, certifications as well, professional certifications, in order to know how we're going to cope with this monster. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, so definitely it's there. So I think it can open beautiful doors for people who are somehow who need like a kind of tools, and it could be a major threat for those who are really, no, I don't want this. Uh, it's like it's not like internet, but it's like internet as well.
I was
So
about to say this
yeah, it's
exactly.
not like
Yeah.
internet, but it's like internet. It's not like internet because it's much more advanced, but
Uh-huh.
it's like internet in the philosophical aspect of it. So it's a tool. So either you're gonna have it or you're not gonna have it, and you stay away.
Yeah.
But now everything is like generated. Not, I mean, a lot of things are generated with AI. Your credit card, whatever, your research, your the Google Map, the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you get into the airport, the face detecting stuff like that. So
High
it's there.
recognition. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So in our field, I think it could be. It could. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just like very careful how to use that thing in 3D animation, not replacing actors though. The voice recognition and reproduction, the script writing. I don't think that we we always need emotion. And for now, at least for now, AI, it's not into emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Because the emotion also comes from something that AI does not have now, which is like contradiction, the
It
human
is.
contradiction.
It is.
And the human contradiction is very specific to human being for now. It's like your fingerprint. It's very specific to human beings. Robots cannot replace any fingerprint for now, at
Yeah.
least.
What I wanted to say really quickly about Gen AI is like with algorithm and with training the chatbots, it's like semi-automated. We can control what is this. That, a lot of chatbots, they ended up being really not really useful to the people who are going to use them because they're not accurate in the sense. It's even mentioned as a disclaimer with ChatGPT and all
Yeah.
those Gen AI. But the thing is that we can use technology to empower our work for designers, for movie creators, but it can never replace the human experience and human aspect and sense. Never ever, because
And that's what
maybe,
you learn when you go to, I don't know, like courses. I'm having a course with IBM on Watson, for example, and
uh.
or the courses with MIT, and it's that's what they teach you as well.
Yeah,
It's not there to replace you. It's going to
never.
be going to replacements because it's a revolution. It's like every revolution, like industrial revolution or digital revolution, it will bring more jobs and it will lay off some others. But that's the sense of evolution itself. You know, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's part of it. We just like need to be careful and put the boundaries and the red flags and the legislations around it and work with it and that's it.
exactly. With more regulations and guidelines, everybody will be
Yeah.
really having the benefit of using AI and enjoying the experience. So, Elyes, the podcast is Ikigai, but I wanted to talk more about you, but with you about the Ikigai, but for shortage of time, and I know, and thank you very much for devoting your time to talk to me. We're keeping maybe for other episodes if you will be available to talk about other aspects in your life, the harmony that you're having, and the balance between work and life, all that, all those questions. So I'll leave them as takeaways for you for maybe for upcoming episodes. Maybe while you'll be here in Tunisia, just let me know so that we can elaborate on this interview. Thank you so much, Elyes, and I'm really very glad to be talking to you. And you're an inspiration. And I look forward to seeing your new movie and taking one of your courses. And I'll let you wrap up by saying really something you want to convey, anything, any particular new message, something you want to say at the end, like a tip.
I think the what I can say is that just keep the passion going. If you're not passionate about something, create a passion, because that passion is definitely the fuel for your life, that brings you hope with everything like it's around us today, like some major catastrophes and sad things. The passion, that flame, will keep you first creating bridges with people around you and bringing more fuel, light, peace as well, in your daily life. And I think succeeding is, I think, more related to be the best version of yourself, and that's I think the mission of everyone. It could be with being a mother, a single mother, being a father, being a writer, being just doing some simple things, but work on being the best version of yourself is everyone's mission.
Exactly.
That's
That what makes the difference actually. If you just talk to
absolutely.
someone, or maybe you
Yeah.
just read someone's work of art, or maybe everywhere in every human interaction, what makes a difference is that pure essence of that person. That what makes Elyes unique from any other person in this universe. And thank you so much, Elyes. And thanks to everyone who's been watching or listening to the IKIGAI International Podcast in its second edition. And I had the pleasure of having Elyes with me today, who is now, he's based in the US, and still we managed to reconnect. So Elyes, thank you so much, and best of luck and best wishes of more success and happiness in this life. Thank you so much, Elyes.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.